Like you are all of those things, but rather than it being this plague that you've been diagnosed with, it can be an indicator that why? Ask the question. Let it be the beginning. Why do I have anxiety?
I think we should kick things off. Let's kick
This
it off.
this
Kick it
week
off.
we're talking about anxiety,
What are we talking about here?
how we have it right now, how we have it in general, and how everyone has it. Um, in this week's podcast book club review,
Podcast club.
in the podcast club, we're breaking down Call Her Daddy's incredible episode with Alex Cooper and Julie Smith about anxiety, overcoming it, and all the different cool coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in these podcast clubs, reviews, conversations that we're having, we hope that we just, get to share our experience with it, what resonated with us, and hope that you guys can take a little bit something away and apply it to your own life.
Mm-hmm. With that, I was really excited, maybe even anxious to do this topic because anxiety
Ouch.
is something that's always been, I think, really well, it was always something that felt like it plagued me, but I realize it's been something that's very important to me and completely shifted the way I view the world. But I've always lived with anxiety. Like there's this heavy blanket of anxiety with everything that I do. Like there's rarely a moment where I feel confident. It's just this like unwavering bit of anxiety that it's like, Linus with the blanket.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's like that blanket's my anxiety and it does the opposite. It's always there. And it's felt crippling at times. It's made me feel alienated. It's something where I thought that I had this lightning rod of bad luck. And as we've grown into our own journeys and learn more about self-care, you start to notice that like anxiety is something that could be really beautiful. It could be something that empowers you, and it's been cool to get to know myself more and to get to learn more about how other people go through anxiety, and then learning that like there are mechanisms out there that we can all take from. So there was a really cool essence to this one today.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that anxiety is something that is so prevalent nowadays, and I think that like with the wave of like Xanax that kind of swept across the US. It's like everyone knows what anxiety is. And anyone can get a prescription to mask your anxiety nowadays. And so it's something that, everyone I feel like knows what it is, but they don't know why it occurs. And I think that this podcast did a good job of just kind of going into what it is and how it's a natural human response. And I think it opened up my eyes to some really cool concepts. Um, I guess I wanted to touch on, you said it's this blanket that you've been carrying around, like Linus. For how long have you been quote unquote carrying the blanket around, and when did you start recognizing, anxiety as, something that was like crippling you, or is like this lightning rod that you described?
I'd say always that I felt like it. Um, just always this feeling of uneasiness, like not being comfortable in my own skin, not being comfortable in social environments. And something that we talked about earlier, you actually said that your form of social anxiety was people pleasing. And I guess I'm like that too. There's
Hmm.
two types. I'm either like hermiting and trying to isolate, or I'm so nervous that I um, need to be liked that I kind of go above and beyond and expend all my social energy and try to be like funny in the life of the party for a little bit. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah,
When do you find that you're doing one or the other?
I depends on expectations. Like if I'm more leading, if I've like orchestrated a group or like I'm the reason why people are together, I typically feel a little bit more obligated to have a little bit more personality, but it fluctuates too. There's times where, like, I'll still just want to, like, if I can just make sure that everyone's having a good time,
Yeah.
sometimes I like to just kind of like go away into the shadows. Like everyone's
Yeah,
cool, everyone's chilling now. I could like relax, and I feel like a weight's been lifted.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's funny you say that because I was just actually talking about that recently with um, Chastity and our therapist that we've decided to start going to, which has been extremely helpful. And we could dive in little bit about that later, but I think it's touching on the social anxiety of people pleasing. And I was bringing up this previous experience of my birthday down in Carlsbad and getting anxious and feeling like I needed to please everyone. And we had a good amount of people down there, and kind of, I guess, really just not, I wouldn't say not being myself, but I feeling the need to just go about people pleasing everyone and making sure everything's perfect, and kind of it goes to your kind of statement of, that's when you feel like you are people pleasing, is when you are either the reason or you've kind of like put a group together.
Hmm. Yeah, and when you were get having those feelings of social anxiety and trying to make sure that everyone had a good time on your birthday, is that something that pervaded into the night? Were you able to kind of catch it and calm it down?
Yeah. I think, well, one, it kind of caused some anxious triggers in me, which I took out on, certain people, and I guess just it caused specific problems, and I noticed it in myself that I was just a little bit irritable. And I
Mm,
was irritable and no one really knew it, but I knew it. And, I reflecting on it has me realizing that, okay, like it was because I was experiencing a level of anxiety, of social anxiety, to try to please everyone, and so I wasn't letting myself have as much fun as I could have. And knowing that, well, not knowing that people were having fun, and everyone, no one was caring about how the night was going and just enjoying everyone's company. And then in my head I was thinking, oh man, is everything going well, is and it was just causing anxiety. And it's something that's super interesting. I think that a lot of people probably experience.
yeah, and it's like it seems that we have these expectations we set of what an event should look like, how people should be enjoying themselves. Did you have a specific idea in mind of how the night should be playing? And if things were deviating from that, was it contributing to that?
No, I don't think I had any specific idea of how in my head it was supposed to play out. I think it just goes to kind of your statement of, when I assume all responsibility, or I take on that responsibility when it's either about me, or I have a bigger part in basically coordinating.
Hmm.
And I think that, it always ends up being fun and never an issue, but it's something that I don't know. I think I've dealt with for a long time, is always trying to be like the people pleaser or the planner, and then I don't really end up enjoying things as much.
Yeah, and I think you're good at it. And I've noticed like a difference is you might get stressed and you might not enjoy it, but you still do it. Where more often than not, I don't set social plans because I get so much anxiety thinking about all of the different dynamics that like I don't even want to stop. I don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah,
Like my birthday is probably the most stressful day of the year because the thought that now everyone's all right, what do you want to do? What's going on? Like that conversation drives me nuts. It freaks me out. And then there's this pressure of like, fuck, like now everyone's out here for me, and that's a whole different topic about like I should probably like myself a little bit more, and
yeah,
it's nice to be able to celebrate a day with your friends, but for me it's just the pressure. Like I don't even want to begin making plans, and I don't even go down that path, but that has its own faults because there's a lot of social opportunities you miss because you didn't even want to start.
yeah. So so basically, your social anxiety, excuse me, your social anxiety for like your birthday is, it comes from like pressure of trying to please, like, well, I guess where do you think it comes from? Like, why do you think that you get anxiety when it comes to your birthday when people are trying to celebrate you?
I think there's this self-loathing of I don't feel deserving to be celebrated, and then there's a pressure associated with all these people here for me, and it's like, do I even deserve this?
Yeah.
And it becomes a different conversation, but it triggers that pattern of thought.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
which sorry, you had
No,
more?
go ahead.
Which kind of ties into a point they brought up at the very beginning that I loved how they defined it. Um, but they, oh boy, where was it?
Is it the
I had it.
spotlight
But
effect?
it's
Yeah.
not even that. They defined it as anxiety is a triggered response to stress.
Hmm.
And I love that because I've thought about that in terms of gravity. But like anxiety is that sensation, it's that feeling of, adjusting to a stress response.
Yep.
But like if you think about stress, everything is stress. Everything. We literally live on a planet where 24/7 our bodies are physically stressed. Why? Because of gravity. At any given moment, there is a stress on this planet. We don't live in a vacuum. This isn't zero G. There's always something coming down. That's why it's so important to exercise, to keep your skeletal muscle mass strong, because the body has to physically resist against gravity. Otherwise, you start to get weak, you start to die. So that's why it's so important. And if you think about it, if anxiety comes about when there's a stress response,
Hmm.
well, in a way, that's kind of a sign that there's some opportunity for growth. So, like, reinterpreting this thing of, all right, I have this anxiety. What am I weak at and what could I grow at?
Okay. That's a good way of putting it. With the, I've never heard of like the, or thought of the gravity example, but I think that you're absolutely right. And when they talk about how everything is anxiety, right? And there's personal anxieties, there's social anxiety, there's work anxiety. It really just is a triggered response for, it's a signal that means that something's happening,
Hmm.
whether it's good or bad. It's typically just a response that, um I think they said it's like a threat response, but either way, it means something's happening, either good, bad, or change is happening, change needs to happen. So I think it's like you can think of anxiety, and apply it to, or not apply it, but reframe it to be something that might be good for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think anxiety is energy. Like I really do believe that that feeling, that built up feeling, that's energy, but because it's associated with something that's typically stressful that we think automatically it's negative, we think this feeling is bad. But I just think we're misinterpreting it. That feeling of anxiety could just as easily be a feeling of excitement. But maybe it's like Dane Cook once put it, that feeling of being terrified and that feeling of pure bliss and performing, it's like it's the same thing.
Yep.
It's just how do you approach it? And that's before he goes and performs in front of, 20,000 people in a sold out crowd. It's that same burst of energy, but how do you channel it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, you think of nerves and, um, everyone gets nervous before some, big event or something that means something in their life. And you could look at that as anxiety, or you could look at it as excitement. It's all a frame of mindset, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, if you have, if you're anxious for, I don't know, you're going to a party and you're super anxious, and something that I really thought was cool was, this whole spotlight effect. And it's like going to a party, and unless you really are performing and there is a true spotlight on you, um, it's like this whole idea that you in your own head think that you're the spotlight
Hmm.
and people are thinking of you, but they're really not. It comes down to like, not no one's thinking of you when you're in like a party setting, and if they are, then maybe that's a good thing. But it's kind of like, you know, I don't know, going into and just making it more of like just kind of calming yourself in that sense.
Yeah, it's like the modern day version of pretend everyone's in their underwear. Like
Yeah.
everyone is so consumed with their own self doubt, their own insecurity that people like if someone is looking at you or talking about you, it's probably for like 5 seconds and they're already moving on.
Yep.
But you might think, oh, that person saw me. Now they're thinking this, that, and the other. And they've literally forgotten you, but you're going to spend the next 5 hours looping about that. Where they're probably spending the next 5 hours looping about when you looked over at them and they think you look like an idiot. Like it's the back and forth, but we get lost in that.
Yeah. What do you do in social settings when you are getting like anxiety, or I mean, do you have any sort of mechanisms that
I go to the
help you?
bathroom.
You go to the bathroom?
I I try to do like it's such a bad coping mechanism, but I'll just go in circles. Like if I can bounce back and forth between groups, if I feel that I'm having a tough time making conversation, like just trying to spread myself as thin as possible so
Yeah.
I'm not lingering too long.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do the exact same thing. I think that's probably the most common
What's
thing
going on over here,
is
guys?
just bounce around and then hit the bathroom.
Yeah.
But I think that something that was talked about was asking questions, and instead of just thinking that, oh, they're thinking of me, it's just ask people questions, ask them
Yeah.
how they're doing, and I guess just making the conversation about other people, and then that should get your mindset off of, oh, are people looking at me, or and so forth.
Yeah. And they bridged it well and I really liked the ability to identify, okay, I'm in my head. Well, this is a really a self-consumed way of thinking. This is insecurity. This is in my head. And you could spot that. You could say, oh, I'm just being self-centered right now. I'm being
Hmm.
insecure. And they labeled it as this is a type of judgment thought. You're judging yourself, you're judging other people, but you could shift it into curiosity. And I've noticed at parties, or like whenever we're all having fun, whether I know it or not, like if you and me are just talking to a group of random people and it's just, fun flowing energy, we're curious, we're asking questions. And in those moments where I feel the most confident, the most fun, it's like I don't give a shit about myself. I'm not focused on that. I'm really curious as to other people. And I think there's that feedback of like when you're
Hmm.
naturally curious, you're secure in yourself, you're confident, you're that's like lower level. You don't need to worry about, oh my God, how's my hair? How
Yeah,
am I
yeah, yeah.
looking? Because you're enjoying life. You're present with other people.
Absolutely. Do you think that in social settings you're less anxious with, say, me or friends?
Depends. There's times I'm more anxious around you guys and I'm really calm around just random people.
Hmm.
Depends.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought that something they talked about was uh whether people relying on others in social settings, and like partners becoming dependent on each other. And I thought that that was something that I think a lot of people end up slipping down in, and I've kind of gone down this route of where I had like social friends, right? And then it's like I would only go and do stuff with my social friends, and then it just became this new level of confidence of going and doing things, but then not wanting to do things if it wasn't with certain people.
Mhm.
And you know, what I've kind of grown into nowadays is like being a lot more independent and not relying on people,
Mm,
and pushing through anxiety for like this level of confidence of like, oh, I'm going to go do something, or go to the beach, or go do something by myself. And I don't need other people, or anyone to go have fun, or go be social by myself.
strong and independent.
Independent woman.
Yeah. I think it's important. It's like it's important to have a group of friends that you want to do things with, that you'd prefer to, but to also be able to separate it and go, this is my alone time.
Yeah.
I need to still be an independent mama jama. I think that's really important. Yeah. And so lately you've been doing that with going to the beach, or how have you been finding that independence?
Well, not necessarily just the beach though. That was just like an example, but like, hmm, I will say, like, going to dinners and stuff, like going out to eat or, like the other night when I had an alone night and I literally just went and grabbed a steak from the Knolls. And I went there and picked it up and hung out for a little, but then got it to go, and then I came back here and ate it and watched, Death Note. But I think it's just I really have found that I like to put myself in social settings alone. Kinda just like to push my comfort. And being such a social butterfly that I am, it's like I've realized that I'm only social in social settings that I know people. And then I kinda get really introverted when I don't know a lot of people.
Hmm.
And I find that the anxiety comes in, the social anxiety. And then it goes to bouncing around from group to group and going to the bathroom and then me like wanting to leave. And I kind of experienced that in over Halloween recently.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that party too. Yeah, it's just like enough shallow conversation,
Yeah.
and I literally remember that same feeling from that party, but last year.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know who to talk to anymore. This isn't really fun, and I'm kind of over it. So like, I could probably have four back and forth dialogue with that person until that dries out, and like. You just plan it. You make your run until it's like, all right, that'll probably eat up 45 minutes.
Yep.
Like, but I just don't know where to go from here.
Yeah. And because I'm not drinking, that's also a new adjustment. I've always been a very heavy social drinker. And this is something that I guess I've kind of conditioned myself over the past whatever years until like recently of being a total social drinker where like you have to have a drink or two in a social setting to loosen up.
Hmm.
And that's not good because then you become dependent on alcohol.
Hmm.
They talk about it in this podcast, but then that just feeds into like Sunday scaries. And
Yeah.
because alcohol is a depressant, um, it takes its toll on your mental and your psyche when you ultimately just not reply, you rely on alcohol to be social, and then you just become dependent that way.
Yeah, yeah, it's so easy because like people go, "Oh, you're dependent now. It's an addiction." It's like it's also a habit.
Yeah,
Like it's all habits, and it's so easy to create bad habits because it's easier to do something that takes less effort than to do the better thing at first. It's like you don't need to you don't need to do anything. If you're holding a ball and you drop it, it's gonna go down.
yeah,
If you want it to go up, you got to put some effort into it. So like
hmm,
it's really easy to pair, oh, I'm anxious to maybe drink, or like me, I eat. So I have to be very cognizant of like I could not give a shit about smoking or drinking at a party, but like if there's snacks and I'm anxious, that like that bag of chips is gone. Those hot dogs are gone. Everything's gone, and that's how I do it. But then I'll get so tired and like sad, and I'll just go into these food comas. And then the same way the alcohol kind of depletes your mood, and then it
yep,
sets you up for the Sunday scaries. Now I feel horrible. I'm like I got a food baby the size of a Samoan wrestler, and I'm just like I'm just depressed and nervous and anxious. Then it just like leads into the next thing, and then I think yeah, that's also just another way to self sabotage. The
yeah.
anxiety just sets us on these bad spirals.
So, do you think like tying both of those in? I know that you one of your vices is eating, and have you realized or put a pulse or like a finger on what typically causes you to go down those spirals of eating? Is it anxiety that kicks in and then you eat and then it's almost like a self-sabotage? Is it kind of just like a sequence of events, or I guess what triggers your um I guess eating?
Yeah, I think, and this is where I really do look at anxiety as energy. Is the quick answer is it would be any sort of anxiety trigger, anything that makes me feel uncomfortable, any sort of conflict. But that's not true because when I get excited, like a happy excited, I get hungry also. Like let's say a new Avengers came out,
Yeah,
I'd instantly go, "Oh, that's awesome. I kind of want pizza."
yeah,
And I noticed it's that same feeling I was talking about, but now there's something positive attached. It's that same energy where it's like I can't think of a good metaphor right now, but it's that same feeling, but rather than something I'm scared of, I'm happy of, but the same feeling. So like I can't just say it's anxiety, it's more energy. And whenever I'm feeling like really good, like let's say, just closed a sale or just having that flowy morning and maybe I'm on one and then I drink some coffee and now I got all the energy in the
Yeah.
world and it's positive, but I'm still getting hungry. Or maybe I have all this energy from different stimulants and coffee and just a bunch of tea and but it's a bad morning. Still same energy, but now it's like nervous, anxious energy. So I think I think it's just been in realizing that it whether it's good or bad, like that feeling of anxiety is a sign that something's happening,
Yeah.
and just have those. I mean, protocols. We're gonna
Yeah.
talk about that. Have a plan.
Yeah. I think that, yeah, that's spot on, and I think it goes into like what you said, this protocol, and we looked into a little bit more, and I think protocol is basically just like the medical term for a mechanism or a plan or a strategy, ultimately a plan of action to have an outcome. And so on the topic of like writing things down, something that I've bridged into work over the course of years and being in sales is I used to have crippling anxiety, before sales calls. And one thing that helped me was writing down like an agenda, writing down points, writing down topics, and things that I would do to prepare myself. And this would lower my anxiety and also prepare me for the call. And I've noticed that, even on the live streams and the podcasts and things, I like to take some time to myself and write down what I want to cover, or at least like do a mental checklist. And it's something Julie mentioned on the podcast, and that kind of clicked with me is why I like to do that is because it really does calm your anxiety. And this also goes into funneling the anxiousness into energy. And so it's really interesting, kind of like the dynamic of harnessing these emotions.
Hmm. Kind of feels like it's throwing a saddle on a wild horse.
That's a really good
Eh.
analogy.
But I think it's such a powerful shift that we're having that if most people had it, it's like rather than thinking, I suffer from anxiety, I have this crippling anxiety, you're saying, I have this diagnosis now. I need pills, I need
Yep.
Xanax, I need like, you need all these things like, oh my God, I'm depressed because I have all this anxiety. Like, you are all of those things. But rather than it being this plague that you've been diagnosed with, it can be an indicator that why? Ask the question. Let it be the beginning. Why do I have anxiety? Well,
Yep.
have you like worked out today? We feel better when we release endorphins and we get shit out of our systems. Like I've been really good this month about at least going to the sauna, but a lot working out a lot more, waking up earlier too, and like I'm just more tired now in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I'm still having tons of anxiety every day, but like not as much. And something I learned or have been experiencing, like I feel a lot better when it comes to bed because I'm just exhausted.
Hmm.
Like my body's a little bit. It's like depleted of everything, but it's also depleted of the fucks I give about anxiety.
Yeah.
Like it just there's no time.
Yeah, I think your analogy of like putting a saddle on it, and I think is once people realize that anxiety is a natural experience, and we are all going to have different forms of anxiety, whether that's anxiety for your body and your weight and your health, whether it's anxiety for work, whether it's anxiety for relationships, it means that something is happening, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Change is happening, experience is happening, and you either harness it and use it as energy, as you said, ride the fucking horse, or or make a change. What are you laughing at?
Don't bring it up. I didn't say it. But you're so right. And that goes back to that stress response of change is always happening. That's nature. That's the flow of it all. And it's like we're getting afraid of the most natural response. We've literally been conditioned to go, I shouldn't feel uncomfortable. When that feeling of uncomfortable is how you live. It's how you
Yeah.
grow. It's how you experience shit. It's like they're giving us the pill.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that I recently learned in the group couple therapy that I've been going to with Chastity, and this is the reframing that I've recently just come to learn is therapy is not a bad thing. It's not like, oh, like, we're doomed and you need therapy. We're doing it to be proactive. And I think whether you're doing it as a relationship or, personally just going to therapy, using it as like a tool or like a protocol to learn more about yourself. And something that we recently learned from our therapist is this concept of everyone has their own experiences. So whether, with this podcast right now, I'm having an experience, you're having an experience, you're laughing, I'm not. Like everyone interprets experiences differently. And there's no right or wrong. All experiences are valid. And so once people kind of realize this, it's a cool mindset shift.
That is. That's comes with a lot of compassion as well to be able to understand that even though you don't agree, because you don't have to agree with somebody's, but
Yeah.
to at least say like they're a person, they're valid in the way that they feel and they think, um, probably even takes a level of stress off of not maybe your shoulders, but other people's. It's like, all right, just because they might be wrong, like maybe they got the math problem wrong, it's like they
Yeah.
still thought that it was no, that's a terrible example. um but I get it, it's got to just be a relief to go, okay, they can be right too. It's like there's more than one right answer. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like I think putting it towards an example relating to social anxiety would be like an example if I wanted to go out to the bars or I wanted to go, not right now because we're not drinking, but say I wanted to go to you know a barbecue,
Mhm.
and I'm like, Aaron, come on, let's go to this barbecue, and you're not really in the mood and you're feeling like, like I
It's like all the time.
yeah, so exactly. It's like it's an example that's like, okay, like in my head, my experience is I'm so excited to go to this barbecue. And yours is I have crippling anxiety to go to this barbecue. Right? Like, and so realizing that n- neither neither experience is right or wrong.
Hmm.
It just is what it is, and we need to be okay with understanding, you know, each other's experience. And I feel like I'm saying experience way too much,
But
but
it's
it's
true.
it's yeah.
And that ties into a really, really important concept that I wanted to touch on. But being introverted versus having social anxiety.
Mm.
Because it's like you can be introverted and just genuinely not want to go out. Like if it's a Friday night, your ideal night might be spending it in, drinking some chamomile tea,
Mm-hmm.
reading your favorite book, where your best friend might be having to go to the clubs to get all the energy up. That's what they want. Um, the person staying home might not be afraid of people at all. It could be a great out, but like their preference is to stay in as opposed to somebody that wants to go out
Yep.
but is terrified to, and it's like it's a daunting task.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can look at it as, yeah, it's just like preferences, and I guess just who we are as people, and where we all stand with different levels of you know, just social not anxiety, but just, I guess, social experience.
Hmm. I've thought about that a lot too, because there's like you're extremely extroverted, and you've always been just a very like life of the party kind of guy. And there's moments where I feel like I could be too, and I love it when like when you and me are vibing and we have that like duo going on. It's really fun. And there's moments I love it. Then a lot of the times like I'd prefer to just maybe have like one-on-one conversations, or like I love as much as I love telling a good story and let's say like holding court, one of my favorite things to do is just being around like hilarious people that I
Mm-hmm.
could not. If I could just laugh for like 2 hours and be around funny people, that's the best. But this thing of like situationally, it's fun to be the center of attention.
Yep.
Then sometimes it's so nice to not have to do anything. And then there's moments where I think the social anxiety comes from wanting to do more, but then having that fear. So maybe it's like people are nuanced. There's times where we want to be extroverted and we want to be introverted. Maybe that social anxiety comes from some block we have in ourselves. We're like we want to be more extroverted than we're giving ourselves the ability to.
Hmm. When do you think that you are more extroverted as opposed to introverted? Because you're absolutely right. Like you're like a perfect combination of intro and extroverted. And sometimes I'll notice you basically are your mood is very extroverted and you're the life of the party and you're cracking jokes, and then sometimes I'll recognize, okay, you're a little bit more, you know, in your own thoughts and reserved for the time being or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when do you find that you kind of shift in these different like modes of between the two?
Energy has a big play in it. Like if I'm tired, I'm probably a lot less likely to. Because I guess maybe my default is introversion. I don't typically get energized from being around a lot of people. Like if I have a lot of energy, it's easier. But if I'm tired, I'll probably just hang back. But I think it I think it's something I've learned from my dad where like you want to be a little bit more, I don't know, maybe just like silly or goofy or just having fun, but there's this fear of like maybe I'm not comfortable. Like if I'm not confident around the people I'm with, or like I'm not willing to take that risk and
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired, it's like the fear of wanting to just be a little bit more high energy just beats you down, so it's easier to be reserved. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a fear-based thing.
Interesting. And maybe there's some level of you don't have the energy to be maybe quote unquote like at your best or most entertaining. So then the spotlight syndrome sits in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And you're a little bit more hesitant and, you know, anxious to come out of the shell because you don't have the energy, and it might be like some like a slight snowball, it all stemming from, you know, energy that you lack or something like that.
100%. Kind of like a perfectionist thing of like, I don't
Yeah.
feel my best. If I'm not my best, why even bother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like, do you ever feel like that at all, or what experience do you typically have?
Yeah, I think that for so long I've always tried to uphold this people pleasing persona that um it's just gotten draining, you know, and like I'm kind of like over trying to be that person. And, you know, for so long I've always been trying to be the life of the party, and maybe it started out like maybe it was trying, maybe it wasn't, maybe it's just kind of naturally who I am, but I've kind of realized that, you know, you can't please everyone, and it's like really draining to try to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do, it causes me a level of anxiety. And so, you know, I've just kind of lost the care of what other people think, and I think that, you know, that's slowly shrunken the circle down tremendously on my social circle. And, you know, things have just been way better since not trying to keep up with keeping in touch with what
Keeping in touch.
what
I like our whole thing is keeping in touch.
no it yeah it is, but it's like there's a level of keeping in touch with the right people and the wrong people,
That's so true.
you know. So it's like, you know, keep in touch with yourself and those around you that actually matter and mean something, and not that people in my life have not meant something, but it's like trying to uphold and please people that don't reciprocate that level of love.
Dude, you know what a good one would be? It's like trying to hold too many grocery bags from the cart. Like you can only hold so many
Yeah,
grocery bags, and it's not
that's a
that
good
those
analogy.
groceries aren't important, but like you're probably going to be good to eat for like a week or two, but all those other grocery bags, like you trying to stock up for a year, you don't need that much. You
Yeah.
don't need that many groceries right now. Like you can't hold 50 bags. Maybe you could hold 8, like doubling up. but you can't hold 50.
Ooh, and building on that, you only want to get the groceries that nourish your body in the best way, make the best meals. So you so
We
you
all have those
get
friends who are Fruit Loops.
yeah, but then on occasion you want some Oreos, so you go and get some
Yeah,
Oreos. But
your
you're not
Oreos,
gonna
your
live on
partier
Oreos.
friend. You go to the club with the
You go,
Oreos.
yeah, the club friends are the Oreos.
Yeah, those like non-sodium pistachios. You have those friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Who's your almond milk?
You
Oh.
unnatural. I love almond milk.
What other
Next topic
concepts?
was being interrupted. But that's actually a massive fear of mine.
Ooh,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Touch on that.
no, it's this thing. It's like a shock in my mind, and it comes from just this like very. I'm always hesitant to talk about my childhood because it always like when I talk about it, it has this very negative stigma. I feel like I act like I'm from this abused household. It's like it's not the case.
No,
It's the
yeah.
best, but there was definitely some fucked up shit from our conversations and how we developed as a family.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all like ADD and tough to pay attention. So I just grew up in a family where like everyone interrupted and everyone lost their train of thought and everyone got
Oh
frustrated.
no.
So it'd just be this trifecta of like, what did you say? Well, I was trying to. No, no, no. Go back to what you said. But I was trying, and it's like 3 hours just gone of screaming. Your lungs hurt,
Yeah.
and I just developed this thing of more often. I guess it goes back to when I have energy, I feel that I'm more focused and I can keep my train of thought. But if I'm low energy and someone interrupts me, I don't remember what
Yeah.
said. So why even bother? And when someone interrupts me and I'm in that, like, it's just, I don't know what's going on. And then I get anxiety because I forget where I'm at. And, like, I don't even want to be here.
Yeah. Hey, I mean that's a good tie. I think that it's crazy that we all stem from our childhood and we everything that we like grew up with, it all had a not a toll, but it all shaped who we are
Chiseled.
today. And something that our therapist talked about, which I thought was really interesting, was this concept of us having to rewire our brains. And she did this analogy of thinking of a paper and you fold it and you make a deep crease and you fold it and you make a deep crease. And these are all conditions from us growing up. And as you unfold and you're basically rewiring your brain, the paper still has these creases in it. And so you're basically trying to do everything in your power to kind of undo any sort of, quote unquote damage or not necessarily even damage, just like the way that you are because of your previous experiences and stuff. And so I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like molding your own patterns over time, and like sure you can fold it into a different shape. You can make different bends, but
Origami.
to potentially navigate the folding and unfolding of life as we reprogram our brains. It's true though.
Ooh.
Like when I read The Power of Habit, they talked about how it just burns these neuronal pathways, or it's almost like water going through dirt or
Mm,
going through sand, and it's like over time more water is going to make a deeper pit.
yeah.
And it's all the same thing. It's like the more you do something, the more you're conditioned to, whether it's good or bad. Like habits don't care if it's good or bad. Granted, you typically well no you'll get a dopamine response to really anything, like it's the repetitive action, and then your brain goes, this is something I'm used to, I'm going to do it more, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do it more, and that's where like you can be as depressed as anyone. Like you could be in the darkest spot, but if you understand that it's what you repeatedly do that creates those folds, that creates that deep
Yep.
pit, like you can you can reverse your life just through science. Like you don't even have to believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like just believe that there's science.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's spot on. And I think it goes back to this whole protocol topic we were talking about is like, you think of like Huberman Lab and Jay Shetty and all these psychologists and these neurologists and, crazy smart people. And they talk about like these protocols. And I was just super fascinated with what the hell a protocol is. And I think like in medicine, taking a certain series of pills for a condition is a protocol. And so, but and then on the in an addition a different route is like doing a certain series of things or actions for a specific outcome. And if we think about just, like you said, just like building habits and doing different pathways on changing us for the better, it's like coming up with a little bit of like a protocol or a series of things that helps you or the person or me or whatever in any aspect of our lives, and then just like building a habit around it.
Yeah, I think that's where we're getting at with what we want to do with origami. It's
Yeah.
building a better future through building better habits. And each week, from what we've learned, we can start implementing our own habits, because that's the whole point of it. It's like understanding more about yourself, but knowledge only goes so far. Like
Yeah.
there's so many people that know so many things, but it doesn't matter until you put it into action. So, what actions are you going to be doing this week?
Ooh, that's
What are you going to do?
what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Um, I think I'm gonna take this concept that she talked about creating a worry list. So sometimes it's impossible for me to go to bed, and um, sometimes it's super easy. But on the nights that it's hard to go to bed, I found that I'm either working late or I don't turn off my phone or I don't detach, and so my mind's just racing. And this concept of this like creating this worry list, and it just kind of goes into the value of having a journal and writing things down. But when you're worrying in night or before bed, putting your mind at ease by writing down what's on your mind, and that will hopefully allow you to go to bed knowing that you're kind of making a promise to yourself that when you wake up, you'll address it later.
Mm, yeah, I liked that. That was how they did it too. It's like it's a reminder to do it later. When I first heard worry list, I like paused it because I thought, oh, that's so smart.
Yeah.
I thought instead of just a to-do list, you could put down things that you're worried about. Like like these are all the things that are just stressing you out. Not even that'll do them, but just listing out what's bothering you.
Yeah.
So I took it as like it's a legitimate worry list of like here's all the demons that I'm just gonna put off to the side. But either way, it works, and it just helps to kind of do you remember in Harry Potter when Dumbledore like extracted the
Yep.
memory and
Puts
put
it
it in
in
the
there.
pensieve?
Yep.
It's like that.
Yeah. And then you can revisit it later.
Hmm.
What about you? What are you going to implement this week?
Breathing.
Breathing.
I'm gonna breathe more. I'm gonna breathe every time I feel a little bit of anxiety. I'm going to calm myself, because there's always a feedback. If you're anxious and you become aware of your breathing, it's typically short and shallow. If you have long, drawn out, deep breaths, it's pretty hard to be anxious. So just being able to have that little reversal of,
Hmm.
all right, I'm feeling it. Let's breathe for a little bit, maybe 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. Do that 5 times. Probably gonna be looking a little better.
Nice. That sounds great. Well, yeah, I think this was it was a good dissection of the podcast club.
The folding and unfolding of life. With that, anxiety is within everyone. Um, I don't think it should be something that you're necessarily ashamed of. I don't think it's something that we have to run from. I think it's something we should embrace and learn to reinterpret it as something that empowers us rather than paralyzes us.
Absolutely. It's a natural part of the human experience, and the sooner you can realize that, the better off you'll be. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
tuning
tuning
in.
in.